Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I have some great interviews for you. First, we talk to Abrar Al-Heeti of CNET about accessibility concerns as we return to work and the pandemic comes to a close. Then we talk to Kevin Purdy of iFixit about Samsung's Galaxy Upcycling program and how things are not what we expected. Then we talk about Facebook limiting the ability to spread misinformation from individual accounts, but is it going to work? Is it going to make a difference? And we round things out with Jason Howell's pick of the week. It is a study talking about what people are doing while they're on the clock and working from home, and it may or may not surprise you. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 185, recorded Thursday, May 27th, 2021. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. Like expired milk, 30% of your customers' data goes bad every year. That's money down the drain. Visit Melissa's developer portal for free access to data quality APIs, demos, and code samples. Freshen up your sour data today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit.
And by Headspace, devoting just a few minutes per day to focus on your thoughts can change your life. Headspace is the easy-to-use app that can help you sleep, focus, act, and just be better. Go to headspace.com/TNW for a free 1-month trial.
And by Nureva, getting your audio ready for meetings back in the office? Well, Nureva Audio is designed for distancing. It automatically adapts to new room configurations so you're ready for the new normal and whatever comes next. Learn more at nureva.com/twit.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I'm the other guy, Jason Howell. Good to see you, Mikah. Good to see you, everyone.
Yes, hello, everyone. Good to see all of you.
Everyone. Welcome home.
Very well. I don't know why the accents came on, but they did. And it's time to kick off the show. So many of us have spent a good period of time at home during this pandemic or in some locale doing our work. And with that has come a rise, of course, in the sort of accessible nature of being able to work from home. And there have been some shifts, some focus on some of the accessible requirements and needs of folks when using the different applications that we've all been using to connect and communicate. But it's one of those things where you look at it and you say, okay, is this happening because it's what we all need and not just what a community of people need? And that's why things are changing. And with things going back to the way they once were, slowly but surely, there is a question of whether the focus will shift away from this accessibility. And so to shine a light on this topic and to talk about what has changed, what hasn't changed, and what folks are hoping will change going forward is CNET's own Abrar Al-Heeti. Welcome back to the show. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be back.
Yes. Thank you for being here, of course, but also for writing this piece because when I came across it, it was one of those things where some of the little bits and pieces I've thought about before, but there were some things that I hadn't considered before. And I think it's important that everybody is aware of the different concerns that folks have, and especially in terms of accessibility. It's a way for everybody to be on a level playing field. And so I think that this piece does a good job of talking about that, especially given kind of, your overall observation and the observation of these advocates, which is the observation that the attention is being paid right now because of the pandemic, but was not necessarily there wasn't as much attention on this before. So can we talk a little bit about kind of what the pandemic has brought in terms of good changes and what it has shined a light on in terms of accessibility?
Absolutely. You really hit on this well, because, a lot of us have been benefiting from remote work. We've all been benefiting from using Zoom to connect with people when we aren't able to be there physically. And these are accommodations that people in the disability community have asked for years, and they've been denied those accommodations because people have said it's too hard. And then the pandemic rolls around and we see that it's not too hard. We very quickly were able to roll out these accommodations for everybody, in the sense that we were all able to work from home and we were all able to connect from home. That technology is there. That capability is there. And so those excuses that had been given in the past were really just not very good ones, because we clearly debunked those immediately. And so, we saw things like automated closed captioning rollout on all Zoom accounts, including free ones. That's a big deal. One of the sources I talked to who is blind said that Slack became more compatible with his screen reader, so he was better able to access his messages. These are all things that should have been there to begin with, but the pandemic kind of was the impetus for, okay, well, we can't deny people these abilities anymore. I mean, both people who are disabled, people who aren't, everybody needs these accommodations, but it's just, it's bittersweet, because people with disabilities have been asking for this for so long. And so we need to make sure that going forward, these accommodations remain for everybody, but particularly for people who really, really depend on them.
Yeah, the story about the individual who was walking to work and almost fell into a pit in a construction zone, and at that point said, you know what, I need to be able to work from home. And the idea that it takes that to happen, or a global pandemic to happen, to get people to sort of move on that point is really, that is, the negative aspect of this. And I totally understand, the conversation about, yes, this is all good and we're very happy about this, but why did it take this in order for people to start to pay attention to this? And then now we're concerned, what happens when we go back to the way things were? Are people not going to be paying attention anymore? Are people not going to be focusing on this? So you talked a little bit about, working from home, being something that, everybody got to do because of the pandemic. It was sort of a forced on thing. But with that came some challenges with video conferencing software, with some of the other tools that were available, and some shifts have been taking place, but there are still a lot of applications out there that don't have the necessary tools. So could you talk a little bit about both the positive changes that have taken place in some of these common tools that we use, and then some of the tools that maybe are still lacking, or overall kind of some of the areas that accessibility advocates are focusing on to improve this technology?
Absolutely. So I talked about how Zoom rolled out automated closed captioning on all accounts, but a lot of people say that, as we all know, these are all AI generated, and AI is not always accurate. So you might think, oh, it's, 95% accurate or whatever, it'll be fine. But if it misinterprets even a few words, it can completely change the meaning of what's being said. So a lot of advocates have said that human captioners are what's needed, so that a real life person can provide these captions, and the person on the other end who may have hearing loss can directly communicate with that person. If they have questions, if they have input, they can be a part of that meeting. They can be a part of that conference. And so there's change that's needed there. We also saw a lot of kiosks and touchless options pop up, but a lot of those devices are not fully accessible either. So people who are blind might not be able to use that touchscreen if there isn't the right, tech in that system. So as businesses think about these things, think about, the future and what digital offerings they'll have, they need to think about all of their customers. We also saw restaurants have QR codes on their tables so that, you don't have to touch a menu. You just scan the QR code on your phone and then it pulls up the menu on your phone. And sometimes that's great because a blind person's screen reader can interpret that menu, but sometimes it's a PDF and the screen reader can't do anything about that. And so with every technological innovation we come up with, we have to make sure that everybody's able to access these things and that it's not an afterthought, because if you make it an afterthought, by default, you're excluding millions of people.
Exactly. And I think that that's one of the things that folks aren't necessarily considering at first, because, we, by our very nature, it's built into our brains to protect us and those, that are in our immediate vicinity. And with that comes kind of a protective layer that we have of not taking on everybody's concerns, everybody's dangers, everybody's needs, unless we open our minds up to that and sort of lead with empathy. And I think that part of the way that we lead with empathy is through understanding and through education. And that is kind of one of the things that I wonder about with this is how folks are, because I don't think that the onus should be on folks who need these accessible technologies to do the educating, but oftentimes it does take advocacy networks and advocacy groups. So could you talk a little bit about what advocates are doing to kind of talk about this technology and to try and keep things continuing to be more and more accessible as we move forward?
There's a really cool organization called Teach Access, and this is a collaboration between industry partners and university faculty and disability advocacy organizations. And this essentially, they work to promote and implement tech accessibility in all products, because that's kind of the right collaboration you need. You need to talk to companies, you need to talk to faculty, and, all of that, everything that they come up with by creating these connections is taught to students in engineering schools and boot camps, so that when these students enter the workforce, they know how to build an accessible product. They don't just come into this company and know nothing about accessibility. That's where you really have to start. You have to start at the beginning. You have to start when people are really just getting into the workforce. And it's also critical for investors, tech investors, startup investors, to educate themselves about the importance of accessibility. And as advocates have said, not to invest in anything that isn't accessible, because a lot of these startups, they roll out products very quickly. And when they roll them out quickly, sometimes they don't think about accessibility. And you have to. That's not something that's just like a nice to have. You have to make your products accessible. And there's really no reason not to do that. Don't you want more users? Don't you want to do the right thing?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's so much here. One of the things that in reading it, I went, oh my goodness, I hadn't even considered this, was as I have very rarely cracked open my door and stepped outside into the world and gone out to places. And you look everywhere and you see all these signs and you see these, I was just at the pharmacy the other day, and the carpet tiles had been replaced with ones that had arrows on them. And of course, the people, there were some folks in front of me who were not paying any attention to these arrows, but I, saw the arrows and followed the path and, went along or whatever. And then it kind of everybody else that was around me, as I was very deliberately kind of walking along this path that didn't necessarily need to be walked along, people then started to follow that path and get in the line as it was meant to be, so that it pulled people away from the door, which was the big problem. But in thinking about that, I have the grumbles about why are you not following the lines? Why aren't you reading the signs? In reading your piece, there was that realization of, someone with low or no vision who goes to a store and there are all of these signs plastered about, the back door is where you enter, or please don't come in this way, go that way. That was one area that I had not considered needing to be available in some digital form somehow for folks who have low or no vision. And so that was a really eye-opening thing to me. And it made me kind of go, oh man, now I want to, anywhere I'm going, you want to be like, hey, this information is available in a way that, people can get it who don't have that ability to consume it in this way. And so, I thought that was a really important point that folks may have not been paying attention to. And so I really like that one. Was there anything else that stuck out to you in particular as kind of an aha moment, or was kind of all of this stuff that you talked about on your radar for accessibility needs?
Well, I also thought that point was really interesting too, because, the solution to that is, wouldn't it be nice if Google or Yelp or whatever, as one of my sources told me, wouldn't it be nice if those platforms informed you that, hey, the back entrance is where you're going to need to go, or, like just all the protocols that different businesses are implementing right now. Wouldn't it be nice to have that the way that you find other information about a business? The other thing that I thought was interesting was that Apple has rolled out a feature called People Detection, which uses LiDAR to essentially sense how close people are to you, so that people who are blind can, maintain a 6-foot distance from the people around them. But those phones are really expensive, and it's the iPhone 12 Pro models. And so you're going to be spending at least $1,000 on those devices. And as one of my sources told me, it may be accessible from an accessibility standpoint, but it's not accessible from a cost standpoint, and so ensuring that it's great. That's a great start, but wouldn't it be incredible if that rolled out on more affordable devices to truly make it accessible to more people?
Absolutely. Well, Abrar Al-Heeti, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Always a joy to have you on the show. If folks would like to follow your great work and follow you, where do they go to do that?
Thank you so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter at Al-Heeti_3.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Coming up, Samsung's Upcycling program. You may have heard about this last month. I feel like that's the first time I heard about it. But apparently it could be so much better. And so we're going to talk with Kevin Purdy from iFixit about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. If you've ever forgotten, and if you've done this, I'm sure everybody's done this at least once, forgotten to check the date on the carton of milk, and it goes sour, and it's just the most disgusting, worst thing. Well, that's milk. Take data. Data is super important. Like milk, we could just throw out the carton and get some new milk, no big deal. But when you're talking about like a batch of customer data, you don't want that to go bad. Up to 30% of customer data goes bad each year. So it's not a matter of smelling bad. It's a matter of like driving bad business. Melissa makes sure your data is accurate. Make sure that your data is current so you reach the right customers. Their tools have helped businesses maintain fresh data for over 35 years. And that right there is exactly why over 10,000 businesses trust the address experts. You can do a number of things with the Melissa profile here. You can verify addresses, emails, phone numbers, names, all in real time with Melissa. Melissa's global address verification service verifies addresses for 240, more than 240, in fact, countries and territories, all at the point of entry. So this happens in real time. And you can validate existing customer data and find new customers. And if you're tired of having duplicate customer information in your database, yes, that's another way that data goes bad. You've got all of this clutter. With Melissa's data matching, you can eliminate clutter and duplicates. You can increase the accuracy of your database in the process and reduce postage and mailing costs, actual costs to your bottom line. Get the information that completes your customer profiles better and more thoroughly by adding consumer demographic information to your records. So, other things like property data or marital status, even social media handles can be included. Melissa's flexible deployment options offer different platforms to suit any preference, any business size or budget, with flexible on-premise, web service, secure FTP processing, and software as a service delivery options. You've got so many options to pick from. You can choose the best way to meet your unique business needs. And Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits to, well, of course, reinforce their commitment to data security, to privacy and compliance requirements. So SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR, all compliant. And big time congratulations to Melissa. They were named a leader in address verification by G2 Crowd in their spring 2021 report. So big thumbs up there. Melissa is supporting communities as well and qualifying essential workers during COVID-19. So you can go ahead and see if your organization qualifies for 6 months of free service. All you have to do is apply online at melissa.com. So don't put up with sour customer contact data. You don't have to. Try Melissa's APIs in the developer portal. It's easy to log on, easy to sign up and start playing around in the API sandbox. And you can do that anytime, 24/7. And you can get started today, right now, with 1,000 records cleaned for free. All you have to do is go to melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit to check it out for yourself. And we thank Melissa for their continued support of Tech News Weekly and the TWiT network. All right, so Samsung announced in April, it was just last month, that it was expanding its Galaxy Upcycling program. And I'll be completely honest, at the time, like when I read it, I was like, expansion? I didn't even know this was a thing. So I don't know if it was just like off my radar or what was going on. But it's all about putting old devices to use in new ways. Because, I mean, I can speak for myself. Considering the industry that we work in, and this particularly the job that I do a lot of the times reviewing phones, like I've got a drawer full of these devices. What do you do with them? You don't want them to just end up in a landfill. Samsung has the idea that, you put them to use in other ways. Maybe not as a smartphone, but maybe as they get older, you can find a new use for them. And they've worked with iFixit to put together a program a few years back. Well, according to Kevin Purdy from iFixit, they could be doing it a whole lot better. So Kevin joins us today. He wrote about how Samsung ruined their, quote, best idea in years. Welcome back to the show, Kevin.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, always good to get you and see you doing well. So let's start with kind of the beginnings of the upcycling program. Because like I said in my intro, like I didn't even realize that this was a thing. But then in reading your piece on this, it really does seem like this has been going on for a while. It's just, it took a while to come out. So I guess spell out a little bit the timetable here and how iFixit has been involved in that.
Sure. Back in 2017, one of our staffers went to a maker fair, I believe in the Bay Area. And there was a table that just had a sign that said, like, upcycling old devices. And of course, that drew his attention, being from iFixit and all. And went over, talked to the crew that was over there, and they had some really impressive stuff. So they had old Samsung Galaxy devices that were working as like an arcade, a full Ubuntu Linux desktop, a cat feeder that actually used the packaging from a Samsung device to be the cat bowl, and then the device itself to trigger the cat feeder to take pictures of your cat while they ate their food. It was nice. A bunch of really cool stuff. And then eventually, kind of in conversation, they're like, oh, well, we're with Samsung. And it was like, oh, well, that's very low key of you. Yeah. And so flash forward a little bit, and our CEO, Kyle Wiens, has visited Samsung's headquarters, talked to them. They've shown us some really early prototypes of the software, which is essentially a bootloader unlocking program, which some of your viewers might be familiar with. Just basically open up the phone, let you install whatever software on there you would like, so that you can do things like turn your phone into a retro arcade or a full Linux desktop. Kyle spoke at the developer announcement in 2017. And then, as we say in the post, which you can find on iFixit.com, crickets. Nothing happened. They kind of stopped responding to us. We were super excited about this, and we thought, well, even from just the business interest, of course, we're all about people holding onto the devices longer, using them more, fixing up old phones. But then also just kind of, we thought it was super cool, and we were waiting to see what would happen next. And it seemed so out of left field for Samsung. And I guess it was a little too out of left field for Samsung because you mentioned that they announced the newest version of it as an expansion of Galaxy Upcycling. We also wonder what the expansion is because it never existed to our knowledge.
It's almost like they expect everyone else to have been privy to what was going on internally or something like, oh yeah, you were there. You were totally there when we were creating this 4 years ago. And everybody's like, well, what are you even talking about?
I mean, it's an expansion to a press release.
Okay. Well, I guess to that end, they weren't lying. So that,
right.
It's the low bar, I suppose. Okay. So, and then their expansion, in air quotes, has to do with some IoT use cases, and you make the really good point. It's not just you. I also, you reference Ron Amadio from Ars Technica. Both of you recognize how kind of underutilized some of these use cases are. Talk a little bit about kind of like what Samsung is allowing for with this program.
Yeah, so if I understand it correctly, and I don't have a Samsung device, I don't have an S9 laying around to use for this, but you can essentially use it with their SmartThings platform, their smart home platform, to, I think, be a light monitor, to be a noise monitor with the same kind of skills that a $25 Echo device from Amazon can do, like listen for a baby crying, listen for glass breaking, a dog barking, those types of things. And it just kind of, I guess that's nice if you like, instead of wanting to sell your S9 for, I don't remember what I said on the post, like, if you at least a decent amount of money now, you could instead turn it into something that I think I could buy on go to Best Buy and buy for $30. A light sensor or a sound sensor. It's a real compared to, we will completely unlock the bootloader of your old device and let you do anything that any coder can imagine. It's like, well, you'll be able to tell if your dog you can use your S21 to check in to see if your S9 hears your dog barking. It's really disappointing to us, obviously.
We've got a single sensor at the top of this phone that can detect that there's a light on, and therefore, there you go. Yes, the light is on.
And there's a lot, I couldn't even get into it in the post, but like there's a lot of issues with the battery life there. I think they mention offhandedly that they have some battery optimizations, but you were not supposed to leave an old smartphone plugged in all the time constantly and running like that. I don't know if they expect people to not have these devices running all the time, and so therefore you charge. Yeah, the modern application of upcycling just doesn't compute for us. It doesn't. If anyone's noticed it, I haven't seen it so far. I put out a tweet a few weeks ago, like, "Hey, has anyone ever used this?" And no responses.
Again, crickets.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Actually, you bring up an interesting point that I hadn't really considered before, because, in my years of reviewing devices and collecting devices and all this kind of stuff, I've thought, like, the one that comes to mind a lot, and we get emails for All About Android about this, is I've got this old tablet. It's not useful for really anything anymore, so I want to make it a digital photo frame or something. And with the idea being, and some people actually do this, the idea being you take that tablet, you load a bunch of photos on there, put some sort of app that cycles through them, but you do always have to have that plugged in. And I guess what I hadn't considered before is that these kinds of devices are not designed with being plugged in all the time. Being, I don't know if it's a safety issue or what is it? What is it about that is not advisable, let's say?
Well, it burns the battery out much faster. Having the device constantly be warm, charging, and pegged at 100%, and constantly trickling through that very high threshold power wears out the battery a lot faster than it would just kind of through a normal up and down cycle. Yeah. So, best case scenario is that you'll burn out your battery pretty quickly. And then, if it's plugged in all the time and you don't really care, that's one thing. But, an abused battery, a battery that's has been drained of all its life and is now constantly being kept warm and charged, they can swell, they can, things like that. Yeah. And you don't want to see that happen. So it's not a doomsayer scenario. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen to everybody, but it is right. It is tricky to manage an old device with an old battery. And some devices will let you take out the battery and run them entirely on power, and some don't.
Yeah, right. And especially the most recent flagships do not. Samsung hasn't allowed for that for quite a few years at this point. And Samsung knows a thing or two about swelling batteries. So,
Oof, yeah.
Hate to say it, but very true. Okay, so, And actually, as we're talking about this, it kind of makes me realize, like, maybe their thinking is, if what we come out with is a program where people can unlock the bootloader and blah, 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 we're going to lose like 90% of the people who would even consider to do this, because just the words unlocking the bootloader, send fear into their minds, because they have absolutely either have no idea what you're talking about, or just would never do that, at least with this like limited use case menu of 3 things that they gave you during this launch. At least that's something that I would say a majority of people may feel comfortable with. But even then, I don't even know how many people are hopping on. Do you have any sense, like, has there been any reporting or any sense in the past month that this has been released as far as popularity of this idea? People being like, yeah, I'm doing that, and it's actually really cool, or it's impossible to know yet.
You would honestly know better than I would. I'm plugged into my feeds and my social media and tech news every day, and I haven't seen anything about it. To your point about it being a nerdy, let's say, thing that only a certain percentage of people would do, it's important to keep in mind that you bought this phone, it's yours. You purchased it from Samsung, so at the thing that most responsible people can do if they want to get rid of an old phone is sell it. There are people who need older phones. There are uses for old phones that other people might have. Sell your device. Give it a second life. What we do at iFixit is try to give people a way to, if there's the one thing wrong with that device is that its battery is old, or that it has a little notch on the screen that makes the screen wonky. Fix that. Fix it. Give it a second life. That's the best thing you can do for your device to keep it out of a shredder and going into a landfill, or e-waste space. But to then allow people to, to take an old phone, an S8 that Samsung is not updating and does not care about anymore. I don't really see the harm in letting 5 to 7% of Samsung enthusiasts, make the cat feeder of their dreams. I have a, automatic cat feeder. It stinks. I hate it. I hate using the interface. I hate programming it. I honestly believe that someone on GitHub can give me a better cat feeder than that thing, that awful device I purchased. So, I think it's very easy for people to get into the habit of like, well, I can only do with this thing what Samsung will let me do, and they've stopped updating it. Like, it's yours. You should be able to do weird, fun stuff with it, and that's why this is so frustrating. This is why we wrote about this. If they had just given up on a program that allowed you to mail in your S9 and get a rebate, we wouldn't really be in a chest about. But this was a chance for Samsung to just kind of do something like real environmentalism. Take old devices, give them a new life, keep them out of the waste stream. So that was what was so exciting to us. And to see it just kind of like putter out and then turn into this, like, honestly, what kind of feels like a way to sell more SmartThings systems, that's what's disappointing to us.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. It really, I mean, I didn't know about any of the history leading up to the thing, but when it was announced, that was my thought, was like, okay, like, this is cool. I will not fault Samsung at all for trying. Like, at least they're trying. I don't know what other smartphone manufacturers are thinking outside the box to be like, hey, what other ways can our phones be used? Let's give the owners of those phones the tools to do something different with them once their useful life as a smartphone runs out. But having said that, I still looked at it and was like, well, but there's so much potential here. Like, you could do so much more than what you're allowing for. That feels like I think I can't remember if it was in your article or Ron Amadio's article where it was pointed out that like this premium smartphone from a couple of years ago is doing things that are like way beneath like a Raspberry Pi. A $35 computer could do more than what these things are being tasked to do, which tells me that, like, hey, there's a lot of potential there that's completely untapped. And
Ron,
that's frustrating.
Ron made that point. Ron made that point about the Raspberry Pi, and it's a good one. I have a Raspberry Pi running my smart home, which is more than you could do with a old S9 on the current program. The weirdest thing is that the company that's done the best job, I think, of this, of like saying, well, it's your phone, we're done with it, go ahead and do whatever you want with it, was Essential. When Essential closed down, there's a GitHub where you can see like literally like everything they have on that phone, basically everything but the schematics. They dumped the ROMs, the low level files, everything except for what Qualcomm wouldn't give them. And like I said, like the actual pinouts of their whole device. And they let it all go. And they said, hey, for any essential owner who wants to do anything with their phone, go ahead. And I even did a quick chat with some of the founders of the Lineage OS program, which is, some of your listeners might know, it's an open ROM program for Android phones to replace the default bootloader, the default software. And Lineage folks there, people who are high up there, said like, yeah, this is the best that's ever been done. A company that no longer exists said, here you go, unlock your phone, do whatever you want with it, essentially. And so that to me is like now the gold standard in my head of what you can do as a phone vendor to let people use the devices they purchased and own to do what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's part of the reason why they felt comfortable doing that as well. They're not around anymore, so they're like, what else are we gonna do? But I mean, other smartphone manufacturers
no longer running for office.
Yeah, right. It's like, what do I have to lose? I mean, I'm sure there are other smartphone manufacturers that have gone out of business and they haven't done that. So it is a good standard to compare against. Well, I thought your article was fantastic, and I definitely learned something about the effort because I was definitely confused about it. So I appreciate you writing it, and I appreciate, as always, all the work that you guys are doing at iFixit, ifixit.com. Kevin Purdy, always a pleasure talking with you. If people want to find you online and follow the work you're doing, where can they find you?
Sure. I'm at Kevin Purdy on Twitter, and iFixit is at iFixit on Twitter and all the other socials. And you can stay tuned to see me getting worked up about more repair issues there and other places.
I mean, it's a topic that's not going away. I was just reading an article this morning that was all about it and about how the technology companies are standing in the way of every right to repair bill that seems to be making its way to through the courts and everything. So no doubt we're going to have plenty more reasons to bring you on and talk all about this stuff because it's very important. So thank you again, Kevin. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much. Up next, our stories of the week. But first, This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Headspace. Breathe in and breathe out. So you've probably tried meditation before, and maybe it just didn't work for you. Or maybe you felt like you were doing it wrong. Well, if mental health is part of your self-care routine this year, you owe it to yourself to try Headspace. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations in an easy-to-use app. Headspace is one of the only meditation apps advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. So whatever the situation, Headspace really can help you feel better. Overwhelmed? Well, Headspace has a 3-minute SOS meditation for you. Need some help falling asleep? Headspace has wind-down sessions their members swear by. And for parents, Headspace even has morning meditations you can do with your kids. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can reduce stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and increase your overall sense of well-being. For a mood-boosting workout, you can even check out Headspace Move. And get this. They did the research. Just 30 days of Headspace lowers stress by 32%. And just 4 sessions can reduce burnout by 14%. Really incredible. And one of my favorite sections of Headspace is definitely the sleep section because there's lots of great stuff there. On top of a sort of radio, which is the area where you can kind of go and you can just continue to listen to sleep sounds and sleep stories and things like that. It's just sort of a never-ending thing so that you can fall asleep to it. They also have these great SOS segments where if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have racing thoughts, you can't fall back to sleep, you can use these meditations to help guide you back into a restful night of sleep. And Headspace is backed by 25 published studies on its benefits. Also, 600,000 5-star reviews and a big number, a ridiculous number, more than 70 million downloads. Yeah, wow. Headspace makes it easy for you to build a life-changing meditation practice with mindfulness that works for you on your schedule, anytime, anywhere. You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/TNW. That's headspace.com/TNW for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now, so head to headspace.com/TNW. NW today. And thanks so much to Headspace for keeping us all calm and helping me fall back to sleep when I need it.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. Let's talk about something that is also bringing me some level of peace. Facebook has announced a change that it is making in its platform, where it is expanding upon the they call them punishments, but I would call them sort of corrective actions that the company is taking for its platform. So for a while now, groups and pages that would share misinformation, those pages would be hit with kind of a now, little finger wagging, and then they would be told that their posts weren't going to reach as many people. But it's not just the groups and the pages that are the problem. Oftentimes there are individual accounts that are sharing misinformation regularly. And so for the first time ever, Facebook is going to limit the reach of personal accounts that spread misinformation. So if your great uncle Gonzo is spreading a bunch of misinformation all the time, you see his anti-vax campaigns and his stolen election posts and all that kind of stuff, and you regularly report those and other people regularly report those for misinformation, then great uncle Gonzo's posts will stop reaching as many people, will stop being seen by as many people. Now, I don't really ever go on Facebook anymore. As I've said before, for the longest time, I had completely 100% deleted, not just deactivated, but deleted my Facebook account. And I ended up having to recreate a Facebook account because Facebook, some outlet on Facebook had taken my photo and photoshopped it with this other person and was running these stories unrelated to either of the people in the photo, but that was using my likeness with that. And the only way that I could report that was by having a Facebook account to report it. And it was wild, it was bizarre, but I had to get a Facebook account again to do that. And so I have one, but I don't ever use it. But someone close to me has a Facebook account and regularly what's the word I'm looking for? Waxes upset, we'll go with, about some of the posts that family friends share on the site. And one of the things that I've always said is, you could just unfriend them or not follow them or, go away from them. But that's often not the case. For some people, there is a level of sort of wanting to see those things and feel different from and have that interaction. And so I like this idea because what this means is those folks who sort of are putting that stuff out there, be it for the sake of impact or for the sake of spreading information that they truly believe is real but is just patently false, are not going to get the reach that they once did, because it's often these posts that get the most reach because they get the most interactions. So by Facebook doing this, it kind of cuts back on the complaint that analysts and folks have had for a long time, which is that it's not the posts that have truth in them that get the most engagement and see the most, get in front of the most eyes, because you drive things by engagement. And so people are more likely to engage with these really inflammatory things. So I think that this is a really good piece this is a really good decision that I'm hopeful will be put into practice. You have a Facebook account because you have an Oculus, right? But outside of that, do you really use it?
I don't use Facebook at all. I had eliminated my Facebook account after many, many years, a couple of years ago. And so I had no Facebook account, and I went through the the challenges of, oh, holy cow. So I have no Facebook account, but everybody I know does. And, not knowing about certain things and missing birthdays and, groups and everything, not being able to access groups. But yeah, I ended up getting a Facebook account primarily because the Oculus Quest 2 required it. And so I wasn't too happy about that. But I don't use that account for literally anything except logging into the Oculus Quest 2 and using it. So, but at the same time, I'm not entirely convinced that Facebook doesn't have its own weird ways to still use that data in some way. But I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. I'm not happy about it, but I do it. But so it's hard for me to talk from a personal perspective about the impact of these rules, everything that's happened in the last couple of years around misinformation. I've kind of missed that, at least as far as Facebook is concerned. I've had no personal exposure to it. It's just these stories that I read and hear about and that we cover on the network. I mean, Facebook did this for its pages. It did it for its groups. Now it's extending that to individual users. I have to imagine that makes more of an impact. They aren't really sharing how many opportunities one person has before they're, let's say, kicked off for good. So I don't know what that is. Like, is that 20? Is that a couple? I'm not really entirely certain, but it's. I mean, obviously, it's good news. Facebook has a pretty messy house that it's been trying its best to clean up, and it continues. But every time I read stories like this. Well, okay, you're right. You're right. Trying to do enough to satisfy the people that are calling them to task to clean up their house. That's the more accurate way of putting that. But I mean, anytime I read these, I'm just like, it reminds me of the reasons that I stepped away from Facebook. Partially, it's the privacy and the Cambridge Analytica thing was just like a moment where I was like, all right, this company obviously doesn't care. Their response to it was very disheartening for me. And so that was part of the reason. It was also just the fact that, like, I didn't really feel good when I used Facebook. Like, I personally would steer pretty clear of getting into those murky waters of like, oh yeah, well, this is what I think. And suddenly there's like a war. But people that I knew inside of my threads would do that with other people that I knew inside of my threads, but they didn't know each other. And suddenly it's like friends from two different sides of my life are battling each other about this thing that they both feel very strongly about. And I'm just like, I don't like being caught in the middle of this. I don't like being the person that like did something that caused this, and I just don't enjoy reading it. So if you guys are going to have that kind of conversation, like, you go ahead and have it. I'm just going to step out. I don't get anything positive out of this experience, and that's why I walked away from Facebook. And stories like this make me continue to feel okay with the fact that I made that decision, which is not to say that this sort of stuff doesn't happen on other networks. I'm on Twitter all the time, but I don't see this as much on Twitter. And, at the end of the day, it really does for me come down to, like, does it make me feel good to use this service? And Facebook, it doesn't. Twitter, I feel good enough, I guess.
Yeah. I would love to just avoid all of it entirely. And sort of, I mean, I guess I've given up on Facebook. I gave up on Facebook a long time ago, but as someone outside of Facebook, I've given up on really anything fixing it because it seems to be that, the cynical take, but the take that seems realistic at the same time as it is cynical, is that part of what is the driving success of this platform is this, misinformation cesspool. That's what keeps it popular and keeps all these people engaged. So how much will limiting that, keep how much do they actually want to limit that, given that it helps keep the service going? And I realize that's cynical, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I agree. It is cynical, but at the same time, okay, show me the proof that, like, I have no reason to be concerned with that. And I suppose news like this could be pointed to as the proof, but we're here time and time and time again. And sometimes it feels like, and not just Facebook, sometimes it feels like these social networks in particular, like anyone looking in could say, this is what you need to do. It's just what that advice would be is so, it goes so counter to the way that they've built their business since, they've existed, that it's probably not likely going to happen. So it always feels like baby steps. It's like, no, if you want me to use your service, you're going to have to take bigger steps than baby steps in order to get there.
Amen.
I don't know how effective these baby steps actually are when so many other aspects of their business are to the driving force. Like you said, they're in place and they encourage all of these other things, and they make the company a lot of money in the process. So,
and let's see, 2004. And it is 2021. So my math, Facebook's 17 years old. It's time to quit taking baby steps.
Yes. Yeah, you're almost 18. You're almost done with high school, Facebook. It's time to grow up. All right, yeah. Facebook?
Yeah.
Look, you just got your driver's license. I know you think you're cool and everything, but
get a job.
I got to tell you, your grown-up years are ahead of you, and you're going to encounter a lot of stuff in your grown-up years. So get ready. All right, enough finger wagging of the child that is Facebook. Up next, a few studies. We talked a little bit about this in our first interview with Abrar about work from home, but I found an article with some studies about effectiveness in working from home, and I feel like poking some holes in some of the reporting or the report data. So that's what we're going to do. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Nureva. I love audio. I consider myself an audio nerd. I think what Nureva is doing is really cool. The technology behind what they're doing is fascinating to me, especially if they can improve meeting audio. So what is Nureva? Well, if you're actually at the position that a lot of us are right now, you're thinking about transitioning back into the office, and, like everybody says, everything's changed. It's the new normal. How we meet is going to change. So when you head back into the office, your meetings in the boardroom or wherever you're having these meetings, like there's going to need to be changes in order for everybody to feel comfortable. Distancing is going to have, big implications for how we meet and meeting room audio. It's going to change how we, deal with room configurations to get the best sound. You need good mic coverage when people are in a meeting space and considering distancing. And Nureva actually makes that possible, because without Nureva, you've got beamforming systems. Those need adjustment, and usually by an expensive technician. You've got tabletop systems that often need additional microphones, and, by the way, would have to be sanitized between meetings. Both might actually require meeting participants to actively change their behavior. So, you've got to sit over here and you've got to sit over there in order for, us to be spaced, but also for the audio to be okay. You're closer to that mic, whatever direction you face. All that kind of stuff comes into consideration. Well, with Nureva, you get a better way to get clear, reliable audio so that your team can act naturally and still feel safe, which is important. One analyst called Nureva Audio the first socially distanced mic system. And it really is designed for distancing. It's perfect for this moment. Nureva uses a completely original approach to audio conferencing called microphone mist technology. They actually have 4 patents on this. The HDL 300 system becomes the first microphone and speaker bar to be certified for large meeting spaces. That's up to 15 feet by 28 feet. So a huge space, and talk about a singular system that can capture audio in that room effectively. That's what we're talking about with the HDL 300. It fills a room with thousands of virtual microphones, and then the audio automatically adapts to any room configuration. You get true full room coverage, so people can be heard from anywhere in the room, no matter where they sit or face, how they're distanced. You don't get that echoey effect if they're too far away. You don't need to bring in technicians with Nureva Audio. You can install each microphone and speaker bar on the wall yourself. Nureva Console puts device management into your hands and on your terms, so you can adjust settings, install firmware updates, check device status, and more, all from a secure cloud-based platform. Console is included with every Nureva audio system, and when you enroll your system, you're going to receive an extra year of warranty absolutely free. Nureva audio products have won numerous awards. They include the Top New Technology Award at ISE 2020 for the Nureva HDL 200 system. And no matter the size of your room, they have a full line of systems to satisfy. So small, medium, large spaces, whatever you got. HubSpot actually is a happy customer of Nureva. Jimmy Ann is their principal collaboration engineer. And he says, we were so impressed with the sound quality, the ease of install, and the ease of use of the HDL 300. It was a no-brainer for us to adopt it. So you can check it out for yourself and learn more about how Nureva Audio is the simple and cost-effective way to let your teams distance in meetings and still act and converse naturally. All you got to do is visit nureva.com/twit. That's Nureva, nureva.com/twit. And check it out for yourself. Maybe you'll get all nerdy about this like I am. I think you will, especially when you realize the benefit and the difference of this system compared to what you might already have. We thank Nureva for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so remember a year ago, think back to a year ago, we were firmly entrenched in what we so often call the new normal of this quarantine that we've experienced. People seem to be preaching, and I totally remember this, it was either you heard, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, be gentle, or you heard the people on the other side, which is like, we're going to use this time to become better, smarter, faster. If you can't find the time to finally learn that skill that you've been putting off, then you have no ambition and all this stuff. I mean, it was noise on both sides. I kind of opted for the be kind on ourselves approach personally. But anyways, some new reports I find a little interesting. I saw this bouncing around on Twitter and realized I had an immediate kind of visceral response to some of this stuff. So I thought we could talk about it a little bit. I think it's kind of interesting. They're highlighting some interesting aspects of this work from home life. And so there's a few things that I'm going to run through here. First one is a Nielsen report. This was completed in March, and it focuses on a few aspects of what people have been doing, how they've been occupying themselves while they're in this work from home environment. This isn't to say that all this is happening while they're actively working, but in the past year, this has happened. Alcohol sales up 55%, spirit sales up 75% when compared to the same time 2 years ago. Wine up 66%, beer up 42%, online alcohol sales up a whopping 243%. So a lot of people shop. I mean, that makes sense, right? Shopping online to buy their booze. Totally makes sense. Obviously, people are drinking just maybe a little bit heavier with all this time that we have at home. LA Times reported in March that marijuana dispensaries in legal pot states have skyrocketed this past year. So people are, taking a break there. Pornhub saw traffic increase 11.6%. Nielsen also reported that online video streaming doubled when compared to a year before. So, and I mean, I know this is true in our household. We're watching a lot of Netflix. My kids are watching a lot of YouTube. There's a lot of watching because when we were trapped in our homes and felt like we could go nowhere, we're looking for distractions. We're looking for comfort. So whether we wanted to take care of ourselves or not, we were still pretty busy. The part of this article that I read that really kind of captured my eye was that it references a new study from ZDNet that focuses on what people are doing while working from home. And so this is interesting. 41% have had sex while working from home. Nearly 50% said they have had an alcoholic beverage. 60% have taken a nap. 77% have shopped online during work at least once per week. And just shy of 50% worked for another company while they're on the clock. And I saw this bouncing around on Twitter, and I feel like I don't know the intention or the goal of the report. I mean, it was probably just a report, right? But I feel like a lot of people would look at this and the knee-jerk reaction would say, see, people are wasting their time. You give them this opportunity and they're going to take advantage of the work and the company that they work for. And I guess what I realized is I wasn't disheartened by any of this. In fact, I was inspired by it because the question that I had was, like, are they getting their work done? Was their employer happy with their work? And if yes, in my mind, like, none of this really matters that much, right? Like, maybe what we learned through all of this is taking a disco nap in between meetings. Maybe that's actually a really good idea because it makes us a more effective worker. And so I guess I look at studies like this and it concerns me from the perspective of like how it's being interpreted and like, oh, this is a reason why we need to pull everybody back and, react. And maybe it's just an indication that the pendulum swung too far in one direction. And now we have this opportunity to kind of correct a little bit. There's plenty of communities around the world that, like a siesta, they take a siesta. It's like in the middle of the day. It's like I take a nap, and that just makes me a better person at all the things that I do around that. And that's not a bad thing in my mind. So especially given the amount of burnout that's happening right now. And when we do look back at even before the pandemic, lack of sleep continues to be something that plagues so many people. And so if they're getting more sleep than they were before, that's resulting in better health, which results in better physical health, which results in better mental health, which, like, there are all of these benefits to those things. And as you said, if the employers are happy, then there shouldn't be an issue here, because that's the main thing is, if we're looking at something and going, let's find something to be upset about, that's no good. If it's all working out and everything's going fine, and they can get their job done, then that's great. And it's odd to me. I don't think I've ever had a job where I didn't at least once buy something while I was on the clock. Like, totally.
That one was kind of funny to me because, I mean, most of the jobs that I've worked have been sort of internet or in front of the computer jobs. So that's a little bit easier access than maybe somebody who's working customer service or retail of some sort. But
sure.
Yeah, that one was kind of funny. But the other things, I find it interesting. And I think that, ultimately what you said is what it boils down to. If people are getting done what they thought they were getting done, or what they were supposed to get done, and everybody's happy, then maybe there's something to be said for these methods that people are taking to, because it's not like they're doing it. I shouldn't say everybody, but in many cases, it's not like they're doing these things to sort of get one over on somebody. It's more kind of what the body decides it wants or needs, and what you decide you want to do at the time, and sort of going with the flow a little more than being very robotic and sort of stuck in one process. So I think if it works and everything's good, then hey, it works and everything's good.
It works and everything's good. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. So anyways, interesting study. And I just really hope that as we return to, kind of the opportunity to come back into the office, that we don't lose sight of kind of some of the benefits that we've experienced through everything. And I think that's a perspective that it's easily lost when we're like, all right, now we got to get right back to where we were before. And I don't know. I think there aren't many opportunities, especially worldwide opportunities, where everyone is kind of forced to like correct a little bit and reevaluate. And like in my lifetime, I don't feel like I've ever experienced anything like this so universally, where everybody was kind of forced into a position of reexamination. And there's a lot of value there. If we allow for it, if we allow for it and don't rush to judgment on it, I guess.
Exactly. So. There we go. Don't rush to judgment, folks. Don't rush to judgment.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this episode of Tech News Weekly. We publish this show every Thursday. All you got to do is go to twit.tv/TNW, and you can subscribe to the audio feed or the video feed, or jump out to YouTube and subscribe there. It's all linked to at twit.tv/TNW.
By the way, if you want all of our shows ad-free, then you should check out Club TWiT. It is a $7 per month subscription that gets you every TWiT show with no ads, access to an exclusive TWiT Plus feed that has extra content you won't get anywhere else, and what is quickly becoming the most popular perk of Club TWiT, the members-only Discord server, where you can join us and others in hanging out and chatting. Just yesterday on Windows Weekly, Paul and Mary Jo were covering Microsoft Build 2021, and they and Leo opened up the floor to questions. And so members, Club TWiT members, hopped in and asked questions of Paul and Mary Jo about Microsoft Build 2021. It was a really cool little conversation there. And that was all happening because of Club TWiT. So $7 a month, twit.tv/clubtwit to get access to ad-free shows, exclusive TWiT Plus feed, and the members-only Discord channel. By the way, if you want to tweet at me or follow me on the social media networks of all sort, just find me at Mikah Sargent, and check out Smart Tech Today a little later today, and iOS Today, which I'll be recording tomorrow with Rosemary Orchard. What about you, Jason?
Right on. You can find me at Jason Howell on Twitter. All about Android, twit.tv/AAA. What else? I don't know. That's about it for right now. I'm working on a review. I don't know if it's a review. It's like my first experience with a network attached storage. I've got the Synology DS920 Plus, and I've been going through the experience of setting that up so that I can have my own kind of NAS server for photos and music and movies and all that stuff. And I knew it was going to be this way, but it's totally like the story of how Jason does everything wrong before he gets it right. So that's going to be my hands on tech for next week, I think. I have no idea how it's going to turn out, but I've definitely done a lot of things wrong before getting it right. So I'm going to do my best to bring that to you next week on Hands on Tech, twit.tv/HOT. But that's it for this week. Big thanks to John Ashley at the studio, also Burke, working behind the scenes to bring you the show each and every week. And thanks to our Discord, thanks to our IRC, thanks to everyone who watches, listens, and subscribes. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands on Photography, here on TWiT TV. Each and every week, Thursday that is, I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.